Welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 66 for September 29th, 2017. Everybody, Daniel Rubino here, joined by Zach Bowden. Joined with. I need to really get my words together. Yeah, it's my brain don't work so good. But we are back for another exciting podcast where we'll discuss all things Microsoft and Windows. This week we'll be talking about Andromeda again. But not so much. It's just getting a name change. But we'll also rehash that topic a bit because it's always fascinating. We'll also talk about MS Ignite, where I was this week, and what that is. And although it is enterprisey stuff, I'll talk about some of the things I saw and why I thought it was kind of cool. We'll also talk about Redstone 3, also known as the Fall Creators Update for Windows 10, now being ready, in my opinion, or at least ready-ish, if you want to jump into that fast ring. And why stick to RS3 when we talk about RS4, which is coming out next spring. We'll discuss some of the new features that were announced this week, as well as the new Insider build. And Zach will talk about his exclusive with the Lumia 2020, an unreleased Nokia tablet featuring Windows RT. But still, he liked it, so let's do that. Zach, how are you doing this fine day?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Hanging in there. Hopefully our stream will hang in there too. We did have a little video mishap, but so far it seems to be holding well. But yeah, pretty good day here so far. Busy week, busy month actually. There's gonna be a lot of news coming out in October, so I'm gearing up for that. In fact, getting ready to fly to San Francisco on Monday for Microsoft's mixed reality event on October 3rd. And just to put in perspective my life, I live in the Boston area, so I got to fly to San Francisco, which is about a 6-hour flight, literally across the entire country, coast to coast. I'll be there for about 15 hours, and then I fly back again.
That is crazy.
I'll probably spend more time in an airplane in an airport than I will in San Francisco, but that's what I do for you guys. I just hope it's worth my time. But make sure you pay attention to Tuesday, October 3rd for that one. But let's dive right into the stories this week. What do we got up first, Zach?
So yeah, Andromeda OS, essentially in short, it's a modular platform for Windows. And I know people are saying, oh, but Windows has been, Microsoft's been working on making Windows modular for a long time. Yes, I guess that's true. But this is the next steps in that plan. Why we're talking about it again this week is simply because apparently it's not called Andromeda OS anymore. I've been talking and listening to sources about Andromeda OS for a long time, almost a year at this point now. And when I first started hearing about it, it was referred to as Andromeda OS, but a few sources this week have come forward and explained to me that that codename is no longer correct and that it's changed to Windows Core OS. Or maybe not the codename. The codename may still be Andromeda OS, but it's actually now referred to internally as Windows Core OS.
That sounds more like its official nomenclature.
I think the Andromeda OS was just an internal codename that was never supposed to be public anyway. And the Windows Core OS stuff is something that they can actually mention to the public because it makes more sense and it aligns better with the One Core stuff and C Shell, which is also referred to as One Shell sometimes, I believe, and a bunch of other stuff. So I've had a lot of people ask what the difference is between One Core and One Core OS as well, since the names are now similar. I don't actually know entirely yet. I am talking to people about it, and hopefully next week I should have an article detailing that. They are different. They're not the same thing, by the way. One doesn't replace the other either. One core is the very base, like the under-the-hood stuff of Windows. It's the binaries and whatever else, and that's shared across all different versions of Windows no matter what. Windows Core OS sits above One Core, and that's the modular platform that I mentioned, which is Andromeda OS that we spoke about last week, where hardware makers and Microsoft can pick and choose between features and functions for a certain device without it being based on predefined product variants. And then above that we have C Shell, and that's the composable universal shell that we've demoed and talked about in the past as well. And then
which is mostly known to people as the UI, the UX.
Yeah, so like the start menu, the taskbar, the action center, Windows, all of that. So basically, that C Shell's the one that most people should be excited about because that's what you interact with. Windows Core OS is an under-the-hood thing that will benefit users based on device, but it's not something that you'll be able to configure or customize or see being built and made. And then One Core, of course, as we all know what One Core is. You never see that happening. It's just something that exists in the realm of binary. But yes, so Microsoft are basically, they're rejiggling how they build Windows with Windows Core OS. So it makes it easier to build and easier to put on certain devices.
I just want to put a little bit of this into perspective too for people. Why this is such a big deal, and just talking about OS architecture in general. So as Zach mentioned, you have one core, which is the bottom thing. It's the one unifying factor that all these OSs are kind of built off of. But what makes this stuff really interesting is if Microsoft were to start from scratch today, like they were just like, hey, we're going to make a brand new OS, they would do what they're doing, and they would have a unified core system. And then they would make a modular OS component. So they would have things like telephony, they would have the Win32 subsystem. They have all these as sort of separate parts that they could pull in and out. And then, of course, they would have a modular shell. And a modular shell just means it adjusts to whatever environment you're in. If you're going to play games, it goes to a gaming thing. If you're on a phone, it goes to a phone type layout. If you go to a large 27-inch PC, it adjusts for that. So this dynamic scaling of the the UI, that's going to be like what C Shell is. Now, why is this such a big deal? And it's taking Microsoft quote unquote so long, because we've been hearing about this idea of one Windows for a very long time, but it's because this OS, Windows 10 it's a new OS, but it's also an old OS, right? It's built off of legacy code from a long, long time ago. And what Microsoft has to do is they're going through this old code, and it's like a surgeon where they have to, it's like doing back surgery on spinal cords, where it's not just like a string of nerves, like it's individual things that they have to cut out and remove and reconfigure so this can actually happen. That's why it's so difficult. I often use the analogy of like if you had a house and you've had this house for 30 years and you're like, it's a great house, but we need to update it. I would like to have radiant heat from the floor or something like that. And it's like going, okay, we're going to rip out the plumbing for the house, but we're going to keep the house intact. And you're going to be able to live in this house while we do this, and you won't really notice it. If you know anything about house construction, that would be a very difficult thing to do. And that's what essentially Microsoft is doing. They're doing all this stuff to the operating system while you're continuously using it. And while we're using it as an open beta, I should mention too. And that's what makes this really interesting and also fascinating, is the fact that they're doing all this separation while it's live. And that's why it's taking, quote unquote, a long time. But once it's done, it's going to give so much flexibility to Microsoft to create these sort of new devices.
Yeah, no, entirely. And the Windows Core OS effort, which I am going to try to refer to it as from now on instead of Andromeda. I know Andromeda sounds cool, but if this is the name that they're trying to push internally, then I guess we should call it that as well. The Windows Core OS effort, the most important part of it, at least for me right now, and this is how they're supposed to be introducing it next year, is the mobile side of things. And that doesn't mean phone. I know people, when I say mobile, when people refer to as mobile, they immediately mean, oh, phones. Sure, phones come under that category, but mobile is a much bigger market. Mobile includes laptops, for example. Laptops are mobile. You can carry a laptop around in your bag. You can take it with you. Laptops are mobile. Tablets are mobile. Phones are mobile. Wearables are mobile. So smartwatches, head-mounted displays, they're all considered wearables as well. And this allows Windows to be put on those devices also. Now, I already know that Windows runs on those devices in some areas. That's totally fine. But Windows isn't a universal OS. I know Microsoft likes to publicly state that Windows 10 is a universal OS, but it's actually not. Under the hood, it's very different for very different device types. So Windows desktops, for example, have components specific to desktop. Windows phones have components specific to phones. They're very different operating systems above one core. The one core layer is, of course, universal. That is a true universal element, as is the universal Windows platform, of course. So you can build one app, run everywhere using the universal Windows platform. That is also universal, hence its name. But then above that, everything else starts becoming defined based on devices. So Win32 program support doesn't run on a phone because that's not something that Windows 10 Mobile has. So it's not the same OS, even though it's got the same name and it shares the same one core. Above the actual base layers, they are two different operating systems. And what Windows Core OS does is it gets rid of those product variants, Windows 10 Mobile, Windows 10 Desktop, Windows Server, IoT, etc., and says, right, this is now all one OS. You just pick and choose the bits you want on a device, and then we'll build that up for you, and then you preload it onto your phone or laptop or HoloLens or whatever it is. And that's a crazy thing. That's a huge change in how Microsoft builds Windows. And in fact, it lays the foundations for Windows into the next decade. It allows Windows to be far more flexible for even device types that don't exist yet.
And I was going to say, Win32, taking that out, Win32 is obviously super important for legacy enterprise, hospitals, large businesses, and a lot of working professionals. But for devices going to the future, we don't really need Win32, especially if there are smaller devices, less than 8 inches, watches, wearables, pocket PCs, this kind of thing. And that's where the Universal Windows Platform, of course, comes in. That's the one thing all Windows going forward can run. Obviously, Windows 7 can't, but Windows 10 devices will be able to run UWP. So not all Windows 10 devices can run Win32, but they can all run UWP, and that's the super important part. And why, when I still hear people go like, oh, are they really committed to UWP? Like, make no mistake about it. That is, like, if you take out UWP, the whole thing falls apart. It's what allows this whole system to go forward. That doesn't mean UWP itself is complete. We've talked about this endlessly before, that it as a platform is evolving too, and more APIs are coming online. And you'll see that more default creators update and everything. Now, that's mostly for developers, but it allows them to create more powerful apps.
Right, and a few other Microsoft watchers this week have also started writing about what they're hearing on Andromeda. So I encourage you guys read everything you possibly can on the project. It is a complicated project. I don't blame people if you don't understand what's going on. I also don't blame you if you don't really see the difference between one core and the Windows Core OS. Again, like I said, I am going to try and write an article next week that sort of breaks it down and explains how they're different. And I will try to make it as simple as possible. But this is very technical stuff, which you can only simplify so much before it starts becoming inaccurate. So if this is something you're not going to understand, my advice to you is don't worry about it. This isn't something you need to worry about anyway. It's just a cool thing in the works that you can be excited about.
Yes.
Right.
Engineering is fascinating, but if you're not an engineer, it gets
it gets very boring.
I think it's cool, but as someone like our audience, a lot of people in our audience, at least I'm a consumer, so I don't really know all this stuff myself. We have to kind of learn as we go along. But it is extremely fascinating, especially since how complicated this OS really is and how much line of code there is involved.
Windows is 30 years old. That's 30 years of code in and out of that operating system. That's a lot of rubbish.
Yeah, and speaking of, we were talking about this with the RS4 stuff, but like regarding like the taskbar and start menu going to a XAML-based system. So, this is just a change in the code that's being used to represent what as the start menu and taskbar. So to you, when you look at it, it's going to visually look the same, but it's going to perform a little bit differently. It'll be faster, a little bit smoother. And they can also do more things like bring a light taskbar to the market finally, instead of always having a black taskbar at the bottom. So all this stuff is super important, but the idea of like they're going to rewrite the taskbar and they're going to do it so that you really don't notice that it's different. Another good example is the keyboard. I was talking to some people at Microsoft about this week, and it was funny. Someone literally asked them, like, why don't you just take the Windows mobile keyboard, just like copy paste it and put it into Windows 10?
Simple.
And just like done. And it's like, and I get conceptually that's what needs to be done, but technically developers don't work on a copy paste method like this. And this is where the breakdown is between consumers and like actual engineers. Like they can't just take code and just move it and copy it over here. They have to literally rewrite everything and make sure, because all the hooks into the OS. So yes, there is going to be one keyboard, for all of Windows 10. That's a software keyboard that will pop up and again dynamically adjust to the screen you're on and for the device you're on. But it's far from a simple task. And so you just have to kind of appreciate this stuff and just take, if you ever want to go talk to a software engineer about this stuff, it's really funny, but none of it's easy. So.
Funny fact about the new shape writing keyboard on Windows 10 desktop, and that's actually a C-shell element, and that's the keyboard that's in our C-shell video on phones you saw that's the exact same keyboard. So it was funny how you mentioned how they can't really copy and paste, which is true. I guess you can't, but with the C-shell stuff, they don't need to. It's the same one that runs everywhere. So that one, if you go back and take a look at our C-shell video running on the HP X3, that keyboard is the same keyboard that's running on desktops with shape writing as well, and I assume is the same keyboard that will run on future Windows phones, which are built with Windows Core OS. So yeah, this is all really very.
And that's the benefit here, right? Is
right
when they need to make a change to the keyboard, it will go across all devices. They don't need to make, okay, we got to fix the mobile keyboard, we got to fix the desktop.
Because what a lot of people don't realize is that even though Windows 10 mobile start screen and keyboard look similar to the ones on desktop, they're not. They're entirely different components. These start tiles on the desktop are completely different, written in different code and everything compared to the start tiles on your phone.
Yep. So big changes coming. Just keep in mind that means 2018, 2019 going forward, you're going to start to see some really unique devices coming out, hopefully. But we'll see. Let's talk about RS3, also known as Redstone 3, also known as the Fall Creators Update. It's got many names because this is Microsoft. So we are, again, still waiting for the Fall Creators Update to officially land, which is October 17th. Now, that's going to be a rolling update, so not all devices will get that update on that day. But if you're on a Surface or a computer from 2016 or 17, you'll probably get it on that day. So a lot of people keep asking us, is it ready? Should you join the fast ring now and put it on your, daily driver, as people like to say? And for the last few weeks, I've been saying no. I have had a lot of issues and bugs and quirks, and the performance just never felt that good to me. That changed with the last 2 to 3 releases, and I say that because a lot of releases have been coming out over the last week. But I use exclusively this week on my Surface laptop and Surface Pro the latest fast ring builds. And even when I went down to Ignite, I took down my Surface laptop with fast ring on there. And that's testament. And I did that not as like, can I do this? Is this a risk? I mean, it was a risk, but I did it because I felt I was confident in it. The performance now really felt good to me. Apps were launching very quickly. All the action stuff was working. And so at least for me, I can say if you want to jump into fast ring now, go ahead. That does not guarantee you're not going to have bugs. Zach will probably share a bug with you right now he's having. It just means we're at that critical juncture, I think, where we're not final lap, where things are really going to start to get stable.
Right. I mean, as Dan mentioned there are people who are still having issues. I am one of those people. I'm running a pretty beefy PC with a GTX 1060, but I'm having a terrible graphics error when editing video in Premiere Pro. Which just entirely just blue screens the system. It keeps doing it, and I can't edit any videos because of it. It's really upsetting. Yeah, I mean, at this point in development, this is to be recommending this as a stable OS is to be expected. Build 16299 is essentially RTM, minus the fact that it's flight signed and not production signed, which basically means, for those who don't know, is that it still has a time bomb and a watermark, and obviously an RTM build doesn't have those things because they don't expire. These insider preview builds do, but 16299 is basically the RTM build. They may include maybe a few more fixes between 16299 and 16, whatever the RTM build ends up being, before they begin rolling out on October 17th. So very minor changes will be coming between now and the release. So we're essentially at RTM stage, which is why the Redstone 3 stuff is now finally feeling good. For most people. Yeah,
I mean, a lot of these last few updates have just been sort of bug fixes, but I think not even, I don't, what they actually share with us, I don't think are all the bug fixes too. I think there's still a lot of polish and finalization of the code coming in. But at least on my Surface laptop and Surface Pro, it's like everything's behaving the way I expect it to. The performance has definitely improved a lot now, and so I actually feel confident in using it. Putting that to the side, I'm still not blown away by the Fall Creators Update, and there's very few features I'm like really excited about.
Same.
But it is what it is. So if you want, you're still taking a risk, but if you want to jump into the fast ring right now, also I put in the article that we did on this, maybe set Cortana reminder so later in October to pop out of the fast ring. Otherwise, you're going to start to get Redstone 4 releases, which as of now, and we'll go into that, are very stable in my opinion, but that's because they haven't really done any new feature changes there. They're just still doing under the hood stuff, but RS4 is running on my Surface Book, and it is doing pretty well. I guess, Zach, you can tell us what's new with that release that came out this week.
So yes, build 17,004. Microsoft finally made the jump from 16.3xx to 17,000, which is something I mentioned they were going to do at some point. The reason they didn't do it straight away is because they originally compiled build 17,000 assuming things would be okay. And it turns out it wasn't, since it's something to do with deltas and build and the number 16384, which is a number that I'm sure many of you recognize as being the old delta number for old RTM builds of Windows. So up to Windows 7, 8, Windows 8, I think, or maybe Windows 9, I can't remember, Windows 8.1. that an RTM build would be compiled with the build number, then .16384. That was always the way. That's just how I know the numbering worked. I haven't really ever looked into it. But then with Windows 10, they were able to stop that. So with build 10240, I think it was 16384, but then with 10586, it was like .0. So they'd finally fixed...
All I'm hearing are just numbers.
Yeah, they finally fixed the Delta thing. They can actually compile RTM builds without the Delta anymore. But then it turns out the main build number can't go past 16384, which is why when they compiled build 17,000, terrible things happened. But now they fixed it internally. Yeah, math is hard, and now they fixed it internally. So build 17,004 works much like a normal build of Windows, and they've run it out to the Insider program and in Skip Ahead, and it includes basically not much. As of right now, it does include a noteworthy change, which I'm very excited to see, and that's fluent design in the Start menu. So this is something Microsoft demoed at Build earlier this year with the announcement of the full Creators Update. Turns out it wasn't going to make it into that release. But it is here in Redstone 4 now, and essentially what it is, it gives you the reveal effect and that nice sort of circular click animation when you click it on a reveal element, which looks nice. It looks really nice. And Redstone 4 will be the release where Microsoft starts just throwing fluent design at the Windows shell. So I'm expecting acrylic to hit the taskbar at some point, to hit flyouts, to hit all sorts of new places, and the reveal effect to be more widely used throughout the OS.
I was excited about the start menu thing until I realized I hide the start menu list, the app list.
It works in the tiles as well.
Okay, so, but yeah, you definitely see it though. You definitely see reveal highlight with the start menu list where you scroll down through your apps, and it is a nice effect. But then I like I said, I realized that I actually purposely hide that so I never see it. So I was just like, that was a big deal for me. But yeah, and we heard this before. Zach and I have talked about this in the past, and our original sourcing on this was saying that going to be stages. It was going to come out first in some first-party apps, which happens. In fact, all the inbox apps from Microsoft are pretty much done, except for Outlook, but that too should be getting done. Groove is the obvious example here. And then we're going to start to see elements come into the OS itself, and that's what's happening now as well. And then, oh, did our live stream go offline?
No.
Oh, okay. It just stuttered for me. It's just YouTube. But yeah, and so now we're going to start to see obviously more of it come into the UI. Starting with the fall creators update, there's more APIs open to developers for third-party apps. Now those are already there, and they can already do some of the acrylic stuff, but it's more kludgy to do. Where the fall creators update, it's literally going to be like a line of code you can put in for this stuff. It's very simple. That means hopefully you should start to see UWP apps get more of this stuff. We already have a few of them out there. MyTube is a perfect example that has really embraced this stuff. I believe, was it Reddit or Read It? It's a Reddit app. There's a few Reddit apps that actually use it as well. So we'll start to see more of this coming out 2017, 2018. And it's a continuous process. But yeah, this isn't a switch. They don't flick a switch. This isn't skinning the OS. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm much more excited about Redstone 4 than I ever was about Redstone 3. I feel actually that's a lie, because I was excited about Redstone 3 until they cancelled most of it and moved it to Redstone 4. So I imagine the same will happen with Redstone 4 moving into Redstone 5. So yeah, we're expecting Redstone 4 to be released in April next year, since they are on that twice-a-year update cadence, and they usually compile in March and September for release the month after. Redstone 4 is looking good. I'm not really hearing much about Redstone 5 yet. Of course, the Windows Core OS stuff is supposed to be done for the mobile devices at some point in 2018. I'm not sure if that means Redstone 4 or Redstone 5, and that also is not concrete. They are aiming for that. That doesn't necessarily mean they will get that. They can easily slip into 2019 if they need to make it perfect, which is what I would prefer them to do anyway, instead of rushing things out before they're ready to be rushed out.
Yeah, the mobile stuff is going to be real interesting to see what happens. We said it before, phone as we know it is now officially over.
It is.
But
it's dead.
Yeah. There's not going to be a phone. The days of Windows Mobile are basically done in the traditional sense, what we've known for the last couple of years, which is a shame, especially, and we'll fade into the Lumia stuff here in a moment, because Lumia, of course, I still definitely miss a lot of that devices, but there is hope. Microsoft is going to go back into mobile, but and this is the thing, our audience knows this. Our audience is smart. They know Microsoft can't just go, oh, here's another phone. We're doing it again.
Yeah.
Here's our fourth one, our fourth attempt at it. It's still Windows 10 mobile. It's just it's got Fluent Design now. like every one of you absolutely knows that would not work. No matter how good the hardware was, no matter how thin the bezels were, no matter how good the camera was, it would not matter. They would truly need to have something different come along before anyone would take notice. And that's the hard part. Now, I've been told this is absolutely a thing. It's going to happen. But there's a lot of caveats. There's basically a lot of stars have to align, is how I was told. And the best way to describe this is you're going to do a moonshot device, a device that's going to be really different, really unique. No one has done it. It's not going to be a slab phone that just has a thin bezel on it or a camera on the back. We've had that design literally for almost 10 years now. They got to do something different. And they're going to do that. At the same time, though, they're not going to do it for the sake of doing it. Put it out there and not have it work well or missing something that's going to hold it back. It's got to really be firing on all cylinders because they know their mobile history is bad. They've lost a lot of faith from people. And there's no way in this competitive market with Google, Samsung, and Apple competing that they could just put another phone out there and have a slight chance even to do well. And this isn't even about doing well third, but we're still making money third. They have to do something completely unique and game changing. And conceptually, I think that's hard for people in our audience because it's hard to think what's beyond a phone. It's like I can't do this. Like I honestly don't know. Okay, it's foldable. Maybe it has a pen or something like that. But outside of that stuff, it's really hard to wrap your head around what this thing could possibly be. But that's where Microsoft's engineers come to play, their OS dev team comes to play. We don't know what patents they're working on, what ideas that they have, or what even their goals are for this device. And so I think that's conceptually people have a hard time. You can't see past what's in front of you. And reimagining the computer, like take Surface, for instance. If I told you back in 2011 Microsoft was going to rethink a laptop,
what does that mean?
yeah. I'm sure no one would have been like, oh, of course. So they're going to come up with like a Surface thing, right? It's going to be a screen with a keyboard that pops off, but the keyboard's like cloth.
Yeah.
It's held on by magnets. Like even if I described that to you, you'd be like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, and that will never work. Right. And a lot of people, if you remember, Surface came out. That's actually the reaction a lot of people had was this is not going to work. It's not going to do well. So it really is hard to see this stuff coming. Even Apple. I mean, go back to the iPhone. I remember when Apple was rumored to be working on the phone. Do you remember all the hilarious pictures that came out? It was basically like an iPod and it just had a phone app on it. Yeah. And you had to dial by using the scroll wheel. Like no one, or it was also, it was a flip phone, but then it just was white and it had like iTunes on it. Like that was literally what people were conceptually thinking. They're just like, oh, that's all it could be. And then when Apple came on stage with this, this device that just had one single button, a lot of people did not predict or see that coming. And even when it did come out, more importantly, not everybody thought it was amazing. A lot of people criticized it. They're just, it doesn't run apps.
People hate change, no matter how good it is.
Yeah. And now look at here we are, right? Yeah. The iPhone is still, setting trends.
I think how people have spoken to me about how Microsoft's future mobile efforts are supposed to take place is that the device that they want to build needs to carve out a new market that doesn't directly compete with the Android iOS market. Because if Microsoft were to re-enter with a smartphone or whatever, right, it would be Android 90%, iOS 9%, BlackBerry 0.5%, some right, other platform 0.2%, Windows Mobile 0. Whatever it is. Microsoft needs to make a device that doesn't compete in that market at all. It carves out its own market where it can have as much market share as it needs, and then others can look at that market and go, hey, we should be in that market, and start building devices for that market. So Microsoft needs to sort of pioneer its own segment of the mobile device, which they kind of have done with the Surface and the 2-in-1. They need to do that again, except for different purposes. So we have the 2-in-1, which is a tablet that can replace your laptop. Perhaps a 2-in-1 that's a tablet that can replace your phone. Something like that. It's not going to be a device that everybody wants.
Right.
By no means. Not everybody wants a Surface, and that's never going to be the case. I'm one of those people who do not like... I prefer the Surface Laptop and the Surface Book over the Surface Pro series. I do not like that form factor at all. However, there are people out there who think that's crazy and that the Surface Pro is the best Surface that Microsoft makes, and that's always going to be the case. It's the same for this mobile device that Microsoft wants to build. It's got to be a unique device that does things that a lot of people like, but also not everybody's going to like. It's not going to be the new iPhone, if that's what people are expecting.
Yeah, and again, I think conceptually that's super hard for people to wrap their head around, because without being definite on something, it's really hard to, putting teeth onto that and be like, wait, how could that possibly work? But
also, I mean, it's worth noting as well, the WinCore OS and the C# stuff Microsoft is working on, it also makes it easier for Microsoft to be able to build these versions of Windows without having to put too much effort and money behind it. It's the same stuff, it's the same team. So if this is a device that does fail, they didn't waste all this. I mean, technically, they are wasting all this time building this stuff so it can function the way it does anyway. But in the future, OEMs as well, not just Microsoft, can build these devices, and it doesn't take a lot of manpower to code and develop and all of this. It's just modular, so it clicks in and it just starts working anyway. Of course, it's not that simple, but it's much more simple than it is today, where Windows 10 Mobile is its own separate OS that Microsoft has to maintain and run separately from Windows 10 Desktop. That's a whole nother. Yes. That's just a lot of manpower for a platform that has no market share. Imagine if it was the same OS that runs on, and it was like 60% market share on all kinds of devices. At that point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a really important part here. This isn't Microsoft will build the what's called the North Star device, the hero version of it. But what they're also doing is building an OS so that their OEM partners could also create and make a similar device that will also hit lower price points and also differentiate, offer unique things that Microsoft may have missed upon. And so it's about creating another category. But again, people have a real difficult time of thinking like, I already have like maybe a smartwatch, a smartphone, and a laptop. Like what could be a device that's in between all that? Like, what would I need? And, that's not an easy problem to solve, but that's where, visionaries and futurists come into play, where they have to imagine this stuff. And that's always what makes I find sci-fi movies so interesting, right? I think I brought this up before. Like, you can go to almost any sci-fi movie, name your favorite one in the future, and someone is always still smoking, which itself is pretty funny. That the idea of smoking is still around, but no one really predicted electronic cigarettes, which really blows my mind. It goes to show you how even the most basic things people have a tough time wrapping their head around, like being different, like an electronic cigarette. What does that even mean? And here we are now, 2017. It's like, vaping, right? It even has its own name. And so it's funny to think about how technology changes around us, but we, don't really predict it either.
I think it's funny. The autonomous driving, Tesla's doing stuff. I would have thought that was going to be a way bigger deal back when it didn't exist, but it's here now, and it's like, okay, that's pretty cool.
Because it's sort of the old, what's that? The frog and I hate that myth, the boiling frog thing. But it's not like you walk out one day and it's just self-driving cars everywhere, self-driving trucks, but it's this slow process, sort of, right? You hear these cars coming online, they can kind of do this autopilot thing, and it's just like thing that's just being slowly ratcheted up, and so you kind of get used to it. It's no different than we all take for granted like smartphones today, or even having high-speed internet in some places. It's like you just got used to it, and you don't. And that's always why I find frustrating, because people don't appreciate sort of what they have around. At the same time, people who create technology will say, well, that's actually kind of the point. Like, Apple, I think you always say this too, which is that when you pick up a piece of technology, you're not supposed to really think about how much work went into it, or, marvel. You're just supposed to use it and appreciate it. And it's only when something goes wrong that people get really complaining, which is why the internet exists in comments. But it's a fun time to be alive right now, but we'll have to see how this all pans out. But I think you take pen, you take mixed reality, you take foldable displays, UWP, and the power of these new processors and all these technologies that Microsoft's working on, and chat and AI, cloud computing. You can kind of envision a device that's going to be way different than a smartphone.
And in the meantime, for those of you who do want a smartphone, or who are in need of a new smartphone. Microsoft is totally cool if you're using Android and iOS, and I know that it angers many Windows Phone fans, but yeah, you can totally use Android and iOS, and it should work just fine. I mean, Microsoft are building great software for it, so I'm more interested in how or what Microsoft are going to build, because I know, like you said, it's hard to think outside of the box, outside of what we already know. But if you look at the work they're doing in mixed reality and HoloLens and all that stuff, and they are still working on HoloLens tech, they aren't dropping that, of course. Perhaps their idea of the next mobile device is something that like goes into your eye that can project holograms in your field of view, where you walk, like the Google Glass, but instead it's not on your face; it's in your eye or something like that. I imagine we're all aiming, or the end goal for every tech company is just to have, bionic technology that just you insert into eyes and ears and stuff. I imagine that's where they want to go, because that's what I would totally be into. That if I could stick a HoloLens UI into my eye without it being a stupid sort of huge headset, I would buy that and use that as my phone.
I mean, we joke around about this, but this is absolutely humanity's destiny unless we blow ourselves up, right? I mean, the idea of cyborgs, mixing our biology with mechanics and improving everything is absolutely going to happen. And there's no reason why, because we know as humans, we're fundamentally flawed. First of all, we age, which is just terrible. And that's just a process. I explained this before in DNA. It's just because your DNA replicates so much. It's like taking a beautiful photo and then like, okay, high resolution, beautiful. And you're like, I'm going to photocopy it. And with a brand new photocopier, and it comes out, it looks nice. Now take that photocopy and photocopy it 1,000 times and see what your end result is. There's things like this on the internet where people take audio clips and re-upload them 1,000 times, and the degradation that happens. So we know all this stuff happens, and the idea is we will somehow have chips in our brains. Well, we will replace our eyeballs with this kind of technology. So it's silly to talk about, but at the same time, 20 years, yeah, I totally see this stuff happening.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting next year's mobile device or whenever it comes out is going to be a virtual eyeball that you stick inside your face. That's not going to be it. I'm just looking further into the future, because I mean, 20 years ago we didn't picture the iPhone or driving cars or anything like that. But it's here today, and we take it all for granted. So
yeah, all fun stuff. What's next on our hot plate here?
I think that was the Lumia 2020.
Lumia 2020. Yes. So I didn't know really this device existed, or maybe I did and I forgot. There's been so many Lumias, but this was part of their tablet series. There was the original tablet that they did release, which I couldn't tell you the name of it.
The 2520.
Was it 2520? Wow, that's right. Okay. I have that device with the keyboard and everything. Beautiful display. Literally like a giant Lumia stretched. And that's what the 2020 is, just not stretched as much. Tell us its facts and features.
The Lumia 2020 is an unofficial name, by the way. It's just what lots of bloggers back when it leaked referred to it as. And since it never was released, Nokia never said, "Hey, this is the 2020." It was actually codenamed Illusionist, so you may recognize that code name, maybe not. But this is essentially an 8-inch Lumia device, as you can see on the video podcast here. It looks like a Lumia, just a little bit thicker, and instead of running Windows Phone, it runs Windows RT. So this is back in 2013, 2014, back when Windows 8 was the thing Microsoft were trying to push, and back when Lumia was still alive. So Nokia had just launched the Lumia 2520, their first Windows RT tablet, which was to sort of complement their, I think, 1520 and maybe 930 or Icon, whatever it was called. And then they were also working on an 8.3-inch smaller version of that tablet. It still has pretty much the same specs. It has a Snapdragon 800 CPU in it, along with 2 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage, a 1080p display, which looks great. With some minor differences, minus the size, of course. This tablet has a 19 megapixel PureView camera on it.
That's crazy.
That's the same, pretty much the same sensor that was in the 930, maybe. It was in a lot of their smartphones.
Yeah.
And is a smartphone class camera. In 2014, this camera on this tablet would have blown most smartphones out of the water. And that's impressive. Not only that, the way it's designed is very interesting as well. It's a landscape orientated mini tablet, which is rare. You don't ever see that. Usually if you see a mini tablet, it's designed in the vertical or in the portrait orientation, because that's better for browsing the web or whatever.
It's almost like an e-reader kind of thing.
Right, but this one is 16 by 9. and its landscape, and it has two front-facing stereo speakers, which is is also pretty rare for tablets. This device looked like it was targeting the very opposite end of the spectrum where Surface Mini was going to target. Surface Mini was a mini RT device just like this one that was going to be more for productivity purpose, taking notes and using Office on the go, stuff like that. This looks to be a tablet that was going to be used for media consumption, something that you would use to download movies and watch movies on, or take pictures and view photos and video on. Very different ends of the spectrum, and this device was cancelled in early 2014. It was developed alongside the 2520, I believe, and we don't really know why it was cancelled. Many believe the reason it was cancelled is because Microsoft was sort of working on the Surface Mini, and they were like, "Hey, Nokia, chill out. We've got this thing coming." Until Satya Nadella killed it, of course. Yeah, so
and RT died.
And RT died, yeah, the same year. So it's a really nice looking. It's very fast. It is a Snapdragon 800. So a lot of people forget Windows already runs on ARM. It runs on Snapdragon devices. This is full Windows. Windows RT is full Windows. It just can't run Win32 because there's no programs compiled for it. And it's ARM32. It runs Windows just fine. This is a Snapdragon 800. Windows 10 is targeting Snapdragon 835s, obviously, and above. But, I mean, Windows 10 could just as easily run on a Snapdragon 800 as well, maybe without the emulation. But it still runs, and it runs really, really well. The modern UI, I still love the start screen on tablets. The Windows 8 Start tile UI, I think it's way better than what Microsoft has going in Windows 10. And overall, this is a really nice tablet. I'm so upset that this was cancelled at the last minute. It breaks my heart.
Can you put Windows 10 on it?
Sadly not. Sadly, since Microsoft do not compile any public builders of Windows 10 at ARM32, I can't do that. I can put Windows RT 8.1 RTM on it though.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there are some ARM32 builds of Windows 10 hidden somewhere internally at Microsoft.
The funny thing is, it's like, I had the 2520. We did a review of it, and it has a really gorgeous display, and it has some cool technology in it. But it was also kind of big, and it was weird. Unlike the Surface, it was a standalone tablet, meaning like you needed a case or something to provide a kickstand. Otherwise, it was just like you couldn't do much with it. I feel like this device would have been way more interesting to have sold at the time than a 2520, especially because this has LTE built in.
Yes, it does.
And that's like, I mean, you throw all that with a camera into it, like that's, especially like a 19 megapixel, pure view camera. All of a sudden, that's sort of like, that's a very different device. Man, it goes to show you how good the Nokia team was, their hardware. They were so forward thinking on things. They had so many bright ideas that they were, real close to bringing to market. We're always going to look back on that, but it is a shame to see such a great company that had so much talent working for it, what happened with them.
Right. I mean, Nokia are known for cancelling a lot of awesome projects. We had taken a look last year at the Nokia Lumia McLaren, which was their 3D touch Windows phone that never made it to market. That was an awesome idea. The Surface Mini, which is not Nokia, I know, but it's part of the same thing, Microsoft. They cancelled the Surface Mini, which was another device we were all very excited about. And there's been many cancelled Windows phones from Nokia over the years. Next week or perhaps the week after, I should have another cancelled Windows phone coming in. You may have seen some leaked images of it already. The bezel-less, or the one with the very small bezels, that is a cancelled Windows phone, which I'm getting in to sort of take a look at and mess with. And I hear that was going to be, it was originally a Nokia X device. So you remember when Nokia were not part of Microsoft, they would build Windows Phone, and on the side they would sometimes build these odd sort of heavily customized Android phones, like very low end ones. This was this bezel-less one was going to be that, but then they started putting Windows Phone on all of them and planning to ship them as well before Microsoft acquired them and killed everything that they were working on.
Killed our hope.
Yeah, and I've seen that bezel-less device referred to as D2 FR, I think, or RF, display to frame ratio. That's it. Which I assume that's what that stands for. I haven't had that confirmed. But yeah, it would have been the slimmest bezels ever on a Windows phone, and at the time, I think it would have been the slimmest bezels ever on a phone. So that would have been cool.
Yep. Again. Now it's like, iPhone is getting Qi wireless charging. Meanwhile, our audience knows Lumia 920 had it, I believe it was 2012.
Yeah.
Again, always ahead of the curve and doing all sorts of cool things. We could have had super thin bezels and been laughing about all the new phones today. Had things worked out differently, but yeah, it's very
It is
frustrating.
such a shame. Yeah, I mean, I do try to collect these cancelled devices. So if you're listening and you are in possession of a cancelled device that nobody knows about, hit me up. Windows Central.
If in the US, hit me up.
I'll hit Dan up. Yeah, Dan would like to mess with some of these. I know. They're pretty cool. It is cool to mess with some of this stuff.
Yeah, if not, just makes you sad. But otherwise, cool stuff. Speaking of hardware, we forgot to put this in the show notes, but I did want to mention about my review for the PDP Talon is up. If you don't know, this is last week I ranted against the Microsoft Media Remote about how it's really nice and also really terrible at the same time, and that they should really make a new media remote, put a Cortana button in there, a microphone, maybe a headset jack. And a lot of people said to me, try this PDP Talon. It's a third-party media remote for the Xbox One, the One S, or the One X. And so I went on Amazon. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. And it was $20. I was just like, Jesus, okay, I'll buy it right now and have it overnight shipped. It's $20. It's a really good remote. Now it doesn't add a Cortana button, it doesn't have a microphone, and it doesn't have a headset jack. Now, I don't really blame them for that. I don't think they could do that because I don't think there's the stuff available for third-party OEMs to make that happen. But in terms of just a solid remote, this improves a lot of things. For one, it has a full number pad on there, so you can change the channels, which is really good. It has, I think, 35 buttons in total, which is really nice. And more importantly, the blaster part works way better than a standard Xbox media remote. So even in the situation where I have my Xbox hidden behind my TV using the Hide It wall mount, which I also reviewed, I could totally use this thing. I did not expect that. And when I tried it, I was like, whoa, it actually worked. I thought I was going to have to aim it at the IR blaster part, but nope. Now, I still have to aim it at the TV, but I mean, I was standing 20 feet away in my kitchen and turning and manipulating my Xbox, which means I'm going to buy a second one now. And the other cool thing is there's no setup with this. You can just walk into any room with an Xbox. If you walked into a Best Buy and their Xbox is out, you can just control all of them. So there's no setup. It just works. And it's, for people who use their Xbox to watch Netflix, Hulu, cable TV, and occasionally play video games, there's no reason why you should not get this. Because right now, if you're watching Hulu, or the worst example is Netflix. Netflix, the show ends. It literally gives you, I think, 5 seconds to pause it or back out before it starts the next episode. They're so devious that way. So you have to go fire up your game controller, which you have to hold down the button. It's got the light blinks. I guarantee you, unless you're super fast, Netflix will start the next episode. But this thing is always on. You just pick it up, start, play, whatever. And it's just, I don't know. For a lot of people I know who use the Xbox as a media center, I highly recommend this. It's $20. It's not a huge investment. But has backlit keys on it that activate when you move it. Comes with 2 AAA batteries. And until something better comes along, there's no reason not to get this.
Awesome.
Do you have a media remote, Zach?
I use the standard Xbox One, which I know is pants, but I like it because it lights up when you pick it up.
But this does that too.
Oh, does it? Okay. I need to look in. I'm just lazy. I just don't.
It does. It's exactly like that remote. It's just longer and better. So
that's what she said.
I mean, yeah, it just has more buttons. But yeah, it has all the backlit keys and it's motion activated, so we can pick it up. It's cool stuff though. You should definitely pick it up. It's changed the way I've used mine. It's so much more fun to use an Xbox that way.
Hey Dan.
Yes.
Did you fly to Florida this week?
I did.
You're crazy.
Yeah. This is the joke last week was, should I go or should I not go? So yeah, this week Microsoft held Ignite. It's a combination of Ignite and Envision actually. And it's I think it's still going on. I think today it's wrapping up. I was only there for 2 days because this is mostly enterprise and IT. And while that's cool stuff, it actually makes the world spin around. It's not the stuff we usually cover. Having said that, to put in perspective how massive this was, I believe it's 34,000 people descended on Orlando in this one little area of hotels for 4 or 5 days. And I was told there are 9,000 insiders a part of that group, which is pretty crazy because the Windows Insider team was there as well. I got to spend a lot of time with them. Finally saw Donna Sarkar in person, which is pretty cool. She's just as awesome as a real live human being. And of course, Brandon and Jen and Jason and all the rest were there as well. But really interesting stuff going on there. Obviously, a lot of stuff was announced. Satya Nadella went on stage, gave a keynote. Probably the most exciting part was towards the end when they talked about quantum computing, which is something you've definitely heard about in the press before. It's always been talked about this thing. It's to, talk about future computing. That's the holy grail of it. But the question is, okay, but what is quantum? Okay, when are we actually going to have a quantum computer? And they started this discussion, and then they showed us what a chip looks like, an actual quantum chip, and then they actually showed us what is pretty much one of the first quantum computers looks like. And this is becoming a reality now, and so you're not going to have a quantum computer anytime soon in your home running, Doom, although that would be awesome. But you will eventually start to see quantum computers, doing Azure stuff, hosting cloud things, doing cloud computing. That's where it's going to be very valuable. It can crunch enormous amount of data. But right now they got to be like liquid cooled with nitrogen, and it's pretty insane stuff. Someday I'm sure they'll be like your refrigerator. You'll just have one. But yeah, that stuff's becoming a reality. I learned a lot about AI and chat bots. I had some good discussions with people at Microsoft about that. So I'll be doing some writing on that over the next few days. But, the AI chat stuff is still super interesting. I think the way I was described, I know this is how a lot of you probably view it too, is 2015, all of a sudden everything was AI chat bots. In 2016, it was like millions of dollars was being spent on it. And here we are, 2017. It's like, okay, so what happened with all that? But it is still progressing. We use Zoe, which is part of GroupMe, and I believe it's also on Facebook and WeChat, a couple other applications. And we have a lot of fun with Zoe. And this week they announced you can play Exploding Kittens in GroupMe, which if you don't know, the Oatmeal, he's a comic artist, came out with a card game called Exploding Kittens. And you can actually play it in GroupMe right now. If you just go at Zoe and do play EK, it starts a game. It's all full of graphics and stuff like that. It's really neat stuff. But stuff like this is still coming online. It's again, it's like quantum computing. It's like holograms. It's stuff we know someday we will have a virtual assistant and someone that we talk to and proactively gets us information without us having to act on it. This is just the beginning of it, but still it's fun to watch this stuff evolve. But other stuff came out for Ignite too regarding, servers and all sorts of stuff we don't really talk about, but
or care about, to be honest.
Yeah. Supposedly Surface Pro with LTE was semi-announced as being released for December 1st, and it's only going to be in the Core i5 configurations, which is what we expected, but we'll have to wait for Microsoft to make something a little bit more official on that. But I mean, it's not a huge surprise that stuff is coming and that it'll work worldwide, right? We're pretty much at the stage now where you can make LTE modems. You just put a SIM in, it works worldwide, and that's how this device will be too. So it won't be, I don't know, maybe AT&T will sell an exclusive version that's discounted, but you'll be able to buy one unlocked, basically. I feel bad though. Like they really should have aligned this so they all came out at the same time. I know that means that then Surface Pro wouldn't have come out to December, but it is kind of a shame because if you're like me and you're like, oh my God, new Surface Pro's out, and you go buy a Surface Pro, and then 6 months later it's like, oh, Surface Pro, now it's got LTE. You're like, damn, I want that one now. And that's an annoying thing as a consumer to have to deal with. It's better to have that choice in front of you all at once instead of 6 months later.
At the same time, I'm not entirely sure LTE is as needed as some people think it is.
Sure.
Like I have never looked at a device and gone, I need LTE in this. It's not something I do.
It's cool to have. I will admit. So the benefits of LTE there, and what's especially changed here is the optimizations that's combined with the new hardware and Windows 10 and eSIM technology is it's a lot more seamless. So having it on doesn't just like kill the battery, outright. It's not always connected. It's not always pinging. It's very smart in how it's used. And it's more seamless. It's just sort of like you just take the tablet outside and you're connected. You don't have to worry about networks. And there's a lot less user, stuff there. But it's true. I mean, the reason why we hear is a lot of people like, oh, they got to put, a SIM card in it. But the SIM stuff doesn't really sell a lot. And there's a lot of good reasons. One, typically, has been battery life has been worse. Now, Microsoft is supposedly saying that this is going to be about 90% the same battery life as the current Surface Pro. So that's actually very good. But a lot of times you have to get like another SIM for this or set up a second account. And what most people end up doing is they just tether their phone. They're just like, oh, hotspot, boom, done. And for the amount of people who need to use 4G LTE on their Surface when they're not at a Wi-Fi cafe or something, it's very small. That's good enough. It gets the job done. It's like me in the contactless payment systems, like the watches. Okay, that's convenient. It was never really hard grabbing my credit card out of my wallet, though, when I needed to pay for something. So that's a similar, I think, analogy here. But for people who want it, it's more, I would say, important for people in enterprise and business who really do need to be they're always working on trains and travel, and they really do need constant connectivity. For them, it's a big deal. And I think that's really what this is going to be aimed at. If you're just a consumer, you'll probably be fine tethering your phone, but nice to have options.
I'm going to run an idea by you. I want to see what you think. Surface Pro 2017 with LTE, powered by ARM.
Yeah, could be, but that's not what. I mean, they've already announced it's going to be basically
right. I mean, it's not. I know it's not ARM specific, but I mean, could they? I'm thinking maybe they're going to release a SKU with ARM to replace the low end M3.
I mean, well, this gets back to my idea, which is that they're just going to release a device called Surface.
Yeah, but that would technically be a new device, wouldn't it? I don't think they're going to do.
I don't think they're going to make a Pro device with ARM.
You don't think so? I think it's a possibility.
Because
the M3, what's the lowest end Surface Pro SKU? It's the M3, right? The M3 is not a Pro CPU in any way, shape, or form.
But it can run Win32.
So can ARM, for the most part.
For the most part, right. I just feel like the Pro series is sort of a little bit more full-featured.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess you're right. But it'd be a cool idea because I mean, Windows on ARM is ready this year. It will be launching this year. That hardware makers will be shipping devices this fall. It's odd that Microsoft doesn't have a device that also is doing the same thing. That's
why I think they need still the Surface, a Surface. They need the 10-inch tablet.
But I don't think they're going to do a new one. I don't think they're going to do one.
I think they will. I think they're going to call it Surface. I think you're going to have Surface, Surface Pro, Surface Laptop, Surface Book. And I don't think this will be called like Surface 4 or something like that, or Surface 5. I think they're just going to call it Surface. And it'll be a 10-inch type tablet, runs ARM, and there'll be an LTE option just like the previous 10-inch Surface that was out.
The standard Surface line has had the toughest life. The Surface RT was just terrible. The Surface 2 was not bad. But then the ARM stuff got killed off for Atom for the Surface 3. And now they're going back to ARM, possibly.
Yes.
It's like, turns out that was right. Let's do that again.
Yeah, Windows RT, I mean, we said this before. Windows RT is not really killed. It's just been reborn as Windows 10 on ARM and Windows 10S. It's like a combination of those two things. But they fixed a lot of this stuff. Like Windows 10S is still just Windows 10 Pro. It can be unlocked. And
yeah, how Microsoft handled Windows on ARM back in the Windows 8 days baffles me to this day. Windows RT, they called it, as if it was like a separate version. Just makes no sense to me. It's like, it's still full Windows.
Plus there's WinRT, which is...
Yeah, that was like, ugh. Microsoft were bad at names. They still are, I'll be honest.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
I think that about does it. Look at that, exactly an hour. Factor in the time where my internet decided to reboot. But I think that does it for this week. We'll do answering questions this time. And remember, join us again next week. We record this live Fridays at 2:30 p.m. You can join us on mixer.com/Windows Central when Zach's computer is working. Otherwise, you can watch the stream on YouTube. You can also join us on Thursdays where we usually do Microsoft Gaming and Libations, but again, we're a little bit busy this week. Make sure you check out our reviews for games. We've had Cuphead, we have Forza 7 come out this week, and a couple other titles, and we've done full reviews on those. Very big releases. Also Play Anywhere titles, which are great. So make sure you go read those. And you can join us live for these questions and answers. Otherwise, we'll catch you guys next week. Take care, everybody.